The Mafia boss married her at midnight and demanded a divorce by dawn. Elena Voss thought becoming Damien Vale's wife meant power and protection. Instead, hours after their wedding, still wearing her gown, she was handed divorce papers in a penthouse suite. No explanation, no mercy, just cold rejection from the most dangerous man in the city. What she didn't know then was that being thrown away would be the best thing that ever happened to her, because the woman Damien discarded would become the one thing he truly feared. Like this video and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. The champagne had gone flat in her glass hours ago, but Elena hadn't noticed. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of the penthouse, the city sprawling 40 stories below, lights scattered like broken glass across velvet. Her wedding dress still fit perfectly. Custom silk, hand-beaded, the kind of gown that took 6 seamstresses 3 months to complete. It felt heavy now. Not because of the fabric, but because of everything it was supposed to mean. Behind her, Damien moved through the suite with the same efficiency he brought to everything. No wasted motion, no second thoughts. She could hear the clink of ice and crystal, the quiet rustle of his jacket being removed. They had been married for 4 hours and 17 minutes. She knew because she'd been counting, waiting for something to shift, waiting for him to look at her the way a husband should look at his wife. He hadn't. "You should sit down," Damien said. Elena turned. He stood near the bar, whiskey in hand, tie loosened but still wearing most of his tuxedo. Even exhausted, he looked like something carved from stone. Sharp jaw, dark eyes, the kind of face that made people nervous in elevators. She'd known what he was when she agreed to marry him. Everyone in the city knew what Damien Vale was. "I'm fine standing," she said. "Suit yourself." He took a drink, and Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. This wasn't how the night was supposed to go. There should have been more conversation. Maybe not warmth, she'd never expected warmth from him, but at least acknowledgement. Instead, he looked at her the same way he'd looked at the contracts he'd signed earlier that day. Necessary, temporary, already moving past. "The wedding was good," she tried. "Your people seemed pleased." "They were meant to be. And your mother, she looked happy." "She's paid to look happy." Elena's fingers tightened around her glass. "So what now?" Damien set his drink down, crossed the room, stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than most people's rent. Up close, she could see the small scar above his left eyebrow, the one he'd gotten in a fight when he was 19. She knew that because his cousin had mentioned it at the reception, laughing, trying to humanize Damien in front of the guests. It hadn't worked. "Now we talk," Damien said. "Okay? About the divorce." The word hit her like a fist. Elena actually stepped back, her heel catching on the train of her dress. She didn't fall, but it was close. Damien's expression didn't change. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, waiting for her to process what he'd just said. "The what?" "Divorce. I'm filing tomorrow morning. Actually, my lawyer's filing. You won't need to do anything except sign the papers when they arrive." Elena's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her brain had stuttered to a halt somewhere between divorce and tomorrow morning. She looked around the suite, at the rose petals scattered across the floor, the champagne still chilling in its bucket, the bed that hadn't been touched. Then back at Damien. "We got married 4 hours ago." "I know. 4 hours, Damien. The timeline doesn't change what needs to happen." "What needs to—" Elena stopped, started again. "What the hell are you talking about?" He moved to the bar, poured another drink. Didn't offer her one. "The marriage was necessary. For appearances, for positioning. My family needed to see stability. My rivals needed to see strength. And certain business arrangements required the optics of a conventional personal life. You provided that. But the marriage itself, the actual legal and personal commitment, that part's done now." "Done." "Yes. We haven't even—" She gestured vaguely at the bedroom. "We haven't done anything. I don't need to consummate something I'm dissolving in the morning." Elena felt her face go hot. Not from embarrassment, though there was some of that, but from rage. Pure, clean rage that started in her chest and spread outward until her hands were shaking. "You used me." "Yes." "You married me for show." "Yes." And you didn't think to mention this before the ceremony? Before I stood up in front of 300 people and promised you my life? Damien took a drink. Would you have gone through with it if I had? Of course not. Then that's why I didn't tell you. He set the glass down with a soft click. You'll be compensated, generously. The settlement will include a lump sum, monthly payments for 2 years, and a property of your choosing within reasonable price limits. You'll also keep the jewelry from tonight, all of it. That should be more than fair. Fair? Elena's voice cracked. You think money makes this fair? I think money makes most things fair. She wanted to throw her glass at him, wanted to scream, to tear the dress off right there and leave it in pieces on his floor. Instead, she just stared at him, at this man she'd married, this stranger she'd somehow convinced herself she could build a life with. She'd known he was cold, known he was dangerous. But she'd thought, somewhere deep in the stupid, hopeful part of her brain, that she mattered, that being chosen by Damien Vale meant something. It didn't. Why me? She asked quietly. Why you what? Why did you pick me? There are 1,000 women in this city who would have married you. Prettier ones, smarter ones, women from actual families with actual connections. Why me? Damien looked at her for a long moment. Because you were convenient. The word hung in the air between them. Convenient, Elena repeated. You had no family to complicate things, no significant connections that would create obligations, no history that would raise questions. You were presentable, appropriate, and most importantly, temporary. That's what I needed. Temporary. Yes. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart, that had broken the moment he said the word divorce, but something deeper, some fundamental belief about the world and her place in it. She'd spent 6 months dating Damien, 6 months of careful dinners, supervised outings, conversations that never went too deep but felt significant anyway. She'd met his mother, his cousins, the men who worked for him. She'd been photographed at his side, mentioned in the same breath as his name, treated like she was building towards something real. And all of it had been a setup for this. I want you out by morning, Damien said. Out. Out of the penthouse, out of the city, ideally, but I won't enforce that. Just out of my immediate vicinity. My people will help you pack. You can take whatever you brought with you, plus the jewelry, plus any personal items you've accumulated. Everything else stays. I don't have anywhere to go. That's not my concern. Elena laughed. She couldn't help it. The sound came out sharp and jagged, almost hysterical. You're really just going to throw me out? Hours after marrying me? The marriage was the goal. The continuation of it would be the problem. Why? What happens if we stay married? What goes wrong in your perfect plan? Damien's jaw tightened, the first sign of real emotion she'd seen from him all night. You become a target. I'm already a target. I married you. Everyone who hates you now hates me too. No, right now you're a prop, a piece of set dressing. Divorce you immediately, you go back to being nobody. Stay married, you become leverage. Something my enemies can use against me. I don't allow leverage. So this is protection? You're throwing me away to protect me? I'm throwing you away to protect my operation. You're a side benefit. The rage came back, hotter this time. Elena crossed the room in 4 steps, got right in his face, close enough to see the tiny flecks of gold in his dark eyes. You're a coward. Excuse me? You heard me. You're a coward. You talk about power and control and not allowing leverage, but what you really mean is you're terrified. Terrified of caring about something. Terrified of letting anyone matter. So you burn everything down before it can burn you. Damien's expression went cold. Colder than before, which Elena hadn't thought possible. You don't know anything about me. I know you're alone. I know that for all your money and your men and your reputation, you're going to die alone because you're too scared to let anyone in. Get out. I'm going, trust me. I'm going, but you're going to regret this. I doubt it. You will. Maybe not today, maybe not next month, but eventually you're going to realize what you threw away, and by then it'll be too late. Damien stepped back, pulled his phone from his pocket, sent a quick message. 30 seconds later, 2 men appeared at the door. Big, professional, the kind of security that didn't ask questions. Escort Mrs. Vale to the guest suite. Help her pack. She leaves in the morning. It's still night, Elena said. Then she leaves soon. The men moved toward her. Elena held up a hand, stopping them. I can walk. She looked at Damien one last time. I hope it was worth it. It was. She turned and left, the men following at a careful distance. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and Elena found herself in the hallway, still wearing her wedding dress, still holding her flat champagne, still trying to process what had just happened. The guest suite was 3 doors down, smaller than the master, but still obscenely luxurious. The men waited outside while Elena went in, closed the door, and finally let herself feel it. The humiliation, the anger, the crushing weight of being wrong about everything. She cried for exactly 10 minutes. Then she stopped, washed her face, and started packing. But by dawn, Elena was gone. The apartment Damien's people moved her to was in a building she'd never heard of, in a neighborhood that barely existed on maps. Not dangerous exactly, but anonymous. The kind of place where people didn't ask questions because they didn't want questions asked of them. 15th floor, decent view if you squinted, furniture that looked rented because it was. Elena spent the first 3 days not leaving, not eating much, not doing anything except sitting on the couch and staring at the walls, trying to figure out where everything had gone wrong. She'd been careful, so careful. She'd known what Damien was, what his world required, and she'd molded herself to fit. Laughed at the right jokes, wore the right dresses, never pushed too hard or asked too many questions. And he'd still thrown her away. On the 4th day, she got angry. On the 5th day, she started paying attention. The apartment building had thin walls. Elena could hear her neighbors fighting, laughing, watching television at volumes that suggested hearing loss. But she could also hear other things. Conversations in the hallway, the super talking to someone about late rent, a woman 2 doors down mentioning that her boyfriend worked security for someone important, someone connected. Elena started listening. She learned that the city ran on information. Who knew who owed what, who was rising and who was falling. In Damien's world, she'd been decorative, irrelevant to the actual machinery of power. But here, invisible and discarded, she could hear things she'd never heard before. She learned that Damien's organization was old, traditional, built on fear and violence and the kind of loyalty that came from not having better options. She learned that there were fractures forming, younger men getting restless, territory disputes heating up in ways that Damien either didn't see or didn't care about. And she learned that she wasn't the only person he'd underestimated. The first time Elena left the apartment, it was to buy groceries. Basic survival stuff, bread and milk, and the kind of pasta that came in boxes. She kept her head down, wore sunglasses even though it wasn't sunny, didn't make eye contact. The bodega on the corner had everything she needed, plus a bulletin board covered in handwritten ads for services she didn't recognize. The second time she left, it was intentional. There was a cafe 3 blocks away that stayed open late. Elena had seen it from her window, watched people come and go at odd hours, noticed that the crowd looked different from the usual neighborhood mix. Better dressed, more purposeful. She went in around 11 at night, ordered coffee she didn't want, and sat in the back corner where she could see the door. She watched for 2 hours. Most of the customers were normal, but 3 weren't. 3 men came in separately, ordered nothing, sat at different tables, and left after exactly 20 minutes. Elena recognized the pattern because she'd seen it before. At the restaurants Damien used for meetings he didn't want to publicize. Neutral ground, rotating schedule, no obvious connection. Someone was using this place for business. Elena went back the next night, and the night after that. By the end of the week, she'd identified 7 different people who fit the pattern. By the end of the month, she'd figured out who they worked for. Lucian Cross. The name meant something in the city, though not the same thing Damien's name meant. Where Damien was old power, Lucian was new strategy. Where Damien used fear, Lucian used incentives. He was building something different, something that looked less like a crime syndicate and more like a corporation, complete with HR policies and profit sharing and none of the casual violence that defined Damien's operation. Elena had heard Damien mention him once at a dinner party months ago. Lucian Cross thinks he can change the game. He can't. He's just too young to know it yet. But watching Lucian's people move through the city, Elena wasn't so sure. They looked different, talked different. There was no swagger, no posturing, just quiet efficiency. and something that looked almost like respect for each other. She started following them. Not closely, not obviously, just enough to learn their patterns, where they went, what they did, how they operated. Elena had always been good at blending in, at making herself forgettable. Now she used it. Dressed like a student, a waitress, a personal assistant, running errands. No one looked at her twice, and slowly, piece by piece, she started to understand how the city really worked. It wasn't about who was loudest or most violent. It was about information, relationships, knowing which threads to pull and which to leave alone. Damien had power because people feared him, but fear was expensive. It required constant maintenance, constant reminders of what happened to people who stepped out of line. Lucian's approach was different. He gave people reasons to cooperate. Better money, better security, the promise of something more stable than the endless cycle of territory wars and revenge killings. Elena found it fascinating. She also found it lonely. 6 weeks after the wedding, she was sitting in the cafe when someone sat down across from her. Elena looked up, startled. The man was young, maybe early 30s, with the kind of face that was hard to pin down. Not handsome exactly, but striking. Sharp cheekbones, pale eyes, dark hair that looked like it had been cut by someone who charged too much. He wore a suit that fit well without trying to impress, and when he smiled at her, it didn't reach his eyes. "You've been watching my people," he said. Elena's stomach dropped. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. You've been here every night for 2 weeks. Same table. Same coffee you barely drink. Same notebook you pretend to write in while you watch the door." He leaned back in his chair. "I'm Lucian Cross, and you're Elena Voss. Or I suppose it's Elena Vale now. Congratulations on the marriage." "It didn't last." "I heard. 4 hours, right? That has to be some kind of record." Elena closed her notebook. "What do you want?" "To talk. Maybe offer you a job." "I don't need a job." "Everyone needs a job, especially people who've been discarded by Damien Vale and are currently living in a subsidized apartment in a neighborhood they'd never heard of 2 months ago." Lucian tilted his head. "How much is he paying you to stay quiet? The settlement, I mean." "That's none of your business." "Fair. But I'm guessing it's generous enough to keep you comfortable and not generous enough to give you options. Damien's good at that, giving people just enough to keep them dependent." He pulled out a business card, slid it across the table. "I'm better at giving people what they need to be independent." Elena looked at the card but didn't touch it. "Why would you want to hire me?" "Because you're smart. You've spent 6 weeks learning how to be invisible, how to watch without being seen, how to move through the city without leaving traces. Those are valuable skills. And because Damien underestimated you, which means he probably told you things he shouldn't have. Pillow talk, casual mentions, the kind of information that seems irrelevant until it isn't. I don't know anything useful." "I think you do. I think you know exactly how Damien thinks, what he values, where his blind spots are. And I think you're angry enough to want to do something about it." Lucian stood up. "Think about it. Call me if you're interested, or don't. Either way, you should probably find a different cafe. My people are starting to get nervous." He left without paying for anything, which made sense because he hadn't ordered anything. Elena sat there for another 10 minutes, staring at the business card, before finally picking it up. The number was handwritten, personal cell probably, the kind of access that meant something. She put the card in her pocket and went home. For 3 days, Elena did nothing with the card. She went through her routine, grocery shopping and cafe sitting and the long empty hours in her apartment, trying to convince herself that talking to Lucian would be a mistake. Damien had enemies. Getting involved with one of them would make her a target for real, not just theoretically. But on the 4th day she called. Lucian answered on the 2nd ring. "Elena, how did you know it was me?" "I've been waiting for you to call. Took longer than I expected. I'm cautious." "Good. Cautious is good. Meet me tomorrow, 2 o'clock, the bookstore on 5th and Marion. There's a coffee shop in the back. We'll talk." He hung up before she could respond. The bookstore was one of those aggressively intellectual places that smelled like old paper and sold small batch coffee for $8 a cup. Elena arrived early, bought a book she had no intention of reading, and waited in the coffee shop until Lucian appeared at exactly 2 o'clock. He looked different in daylight, less threatening, almost normal. He ordered tea, which surprised her, and sat down with the kind of relaxed posture that suggested he owned the place. "Thanks for coming," he said. "You didn't give me much choice." "You always have a choice. You just don't always like the options." He took a sip of tea. "So, tell me about Damien. What do you want to know?" "Everything. How he thinks, how he operates, what he's afraid of." Elena hesitated. "This feels like betrayal." "It is. But he betrayed you first. And frankly, what I'm asking you to do is give me information I could probably get elsewhere with enough time and money. You're just faster, more direct." Lucian set his cup down. "I'm not trying to destroy Damien. I'm trying to build something better. Something that doesn't require marriages of convenience and discarded wives. But to do that, I need to understand how the old system works. And if I help you, then you become part of the new system with actual power, actual agency, not just a settlement check in an apartment you didn't choose." Elena looked at him for a long moment. "What kind of job are we talking about? Analyst? Advisor? Someone who understands the traditional operations well enough to help me navigate around them. You won't be in danger. You won't be public-facing. You'll just be someone I trust to tell me the truth about situations I don't fully understand." "That's it?" "That's it. For now." "And later?" Lucian smiled. "Later, we see what you're actually capable of." Elena thought about the penthouse, the wedding, Damien's face when he told her she was convenient. "When do I start?" "Right now. Tell me about his security." So she did. She told him about the rotations, the blind spots, the cousin who drank too much and talked too freely. She told him about Damien's mother, who was sharper than anyone gave her credit for, and his accountant, who kept 2 sets of books. She told him about the supplier in Brooklyn who was skimming product, and the lieutenant who was sleeping with his boss's ex-wife, and the warehouse in Queens that Damien thought was secret but absolutely wasn't. She told him everything, and with every piece of information, she felt something shift inside her. Not guilt. She'd expected guilt, but instead it felt like waking up, like seeing clearly for the first time in months. When she finished, Lucian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You're better at this than I thought." "At what?" "Understanding power, how it moves, where it's weak." He pulled out a phone, sent a quick message. "I'm going to introduce you to some people. They're going to test you, ask you questions, put you in situations, see how you think. If you impress them, we'll talk about making this permanent. And if I don't, then you go back to your apartment and we pretend this never happened. No hard feelings, no consequences." Elena nodded slowly. "Okay. Okay." Lucian stood up. "Someone will contact you within 48 hours. Be ready." He left the same way he'd left the cafe, without ceremony, without looking back. Elena sat there alone, surrounded by books and expensive coffee, feeling like she'd just made a decision she couldn't unmake. She had no idea if it was the right one, but for the first time since the wedding, she felt like she'd made a choice that was actually hers. But the test came 36 hours later. Elena was at home attempting to cook dinner when her phone buzzed with a message from a number she didn't recognize. An address in Midtown. A time. Nothing else. She almost didn't go. The whole thing felt like a setup or a trap, or at minimum a bad idea. But something in her, the same thing that had survived Damien's rejection and the long weeks of isolation, pushed her forward. The address was an office building, new construction, all glass and steel, and the kind of lobby that required 3 forms of ID. Elena gave a name she'd been told to use, and the security guard waved her through without questions. 18th floor, suite 1842. The elevator was fast and silent. When the doors opened, Elena found herself in a hallway that looked more like a high-end hotel than an office. Soft lighting, expensive art, the kind of carpet that absorbed sound. Suite 1842 was at the end. The door was open. Inside, 3 people waited, 2 men and a woman, all around Lucian's age, all dressed like they worked in finance, but carried themselves like they worked in something else entirely. The woman stood up when Elena entered. "Elena Voss, welcome. I'm Sarah Chen, this is Marcus Reed, and that's James Kwan. We work with Lucian. He's told us about you." "Not too much, I hope," Elena said. Sarah smiled. "Enough to make us curious. Please, sit." Elena sat. The chair was comfortable, which somehow made her more nervous. This felt too polished, too professional. She'd expected something rougher, more obviously criminal. "So," Marcus said, "Lucian thinks you have potential. We're here to see if he's right." "How?" Questions, scenarios, nothing too complicated. James pulled out a tablet, swiped through something. "Let's start simple. You're trying to move a high-value asset through the city without attracting attention. What's your approach?" Elena blinked. "What kind of asset? Does it matter?" "Yes. Documents, you use a courier. Money, you use multiple small transfers. People, you use misdirection." "Explain misdirection." "You create a second, more obvious movement that draws attention. Maybe a loud, visible convoy that looks important but carries nothing. While everyone's watching that, your actual asset moves quietly through a completely different route." Sarah nodded. "Good. Next scenario. You have information about a rival operation, solid intelligence, verified. Do you use it immediately or wait?" "Depends on the information and the goal." "Elaborate." Elena thought about it. "If it's time-sensitive, something that becomes useless if you don't act fast, you use it. If it's structural, something about how they operate, you wait. You watch. You see if they make the same mistake twice, because that tells you it's a pattern, not an accident. Patterns are more valuable than single opportunities." "Why?" "Because patterns tell you how someone thinks. And if you know how someone thinks, you can predict what they'll do. Prediction is power." Marcus and James exchanged a look. Sarah just smiled. They asked her 20 more questions. Some were straightforward, about logistics and security. Others were more abstract, about decision-making and risk assessment. Elena answered as honestly as she could, drawing on everything she'd learned from watching Damien, from listening to his people, from her weeks of invisible observation. By the end, she was exhausted. "Last question," Sarah said. "Why should we trust you?" "You shouldn't," Elena said. "Not yet. I'm Damien Vale's ex-wife. I have every reason to want revenge, which makes my motivations questionable. I have no formal training, no proven track record, and no guarantees that I won't flip back to his side if he offers me a better deal." She paused. "But I'm also invisible. I can move through his world without being recognized, listen without being noticed, and I understand how he thinks better than anyone you're going to find. Those are valuable assets. Whether they're valuable enough to offset the risk, that's your call." Silence. Then Sarah laughed. "I like her." "Me too," James said. Marcus stood up, offered his hand. "Welcome to the team. Lucian will be in touch with details. For now, go home, get some rest. Starting next week, you're going to be busy." Elena shook his hand, still processing. "That's it?" "That's it. You passed." "What was I being tested on?" "Honesty, intelligence, whether you understand that trust is earned, not given." Sarah walked her to the door. "We've all been underestimated at some point. Lucian builds his organization out of people who know what that feels like and refuse to let it define them. You fit." Elena left the building in a daze. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of orange and gold, and for the first time in 2 months, she felt something other than rage or grief. She felt purpose. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lucian. "Told you that you were better than you thought. See you Monday." Elena smiled and headed home. Monday arrived faster than Elena expected. She'd spent the weekend in a strange state of nervous energy, unable to sit still, unable to focus on anything except the fact that her entire life was about to change again. This time, though, she was choosing the change. That made it different. Terrifying, but different. The message came at 7 in the morning. An address in the financial district, 20th floor. Ask for Martin. Elena dressed carefully, nothing flashy, just dark pants and a simple blouse that could pass for business casual. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 2 months ago, she'd been picking out a wedding dress. Now she was preparing for her first day working for one of Damien's rivals. The building was newer than the one where she'd been tested, all clean lines and tinted glass that reflected the morning sun. The lobby was busy with people in expensive suits carrying expensive coffee, everyone moving with the kind of purpose that came from actually mattering. Elena felt out of place immediately. Martin turned out to be a security guard who looked like he'd been doing this job for 20 years and had seen everything twice. He checked her ID, made a phone call, then handed her a temporary badge. 20th floor. Someone will meet you. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have. Elena watched the numbers climb, each floor a reminder that she was moving further from the safety of anonymity and closer to something she didn't fully understand yet. When the doors opened, Sarah Chen was waiting. Right on time, Sarah said. Good. Lucian hates lateness. Is he here? Conference call with Tokyo. He'll be done in an hour. Come on, I'll show you your space. The office was open concept, which Elena had expected, but quieter than she'd anticipated. People worked at sleek desks with multiple monitors, talking in low voices or typing with focused intensity. No one looked up when she passed. Sarah led her to a desk near the window, away from the main cluster. You'll work here for now, Sarah said. Computer's already set up, login credentials are in the folder. Marcus will come by around 10 to walk you through the systems. Until then, read these. She dropped a stack of files on the desk. Physical files, paper and ink, which seemed almost quaint in an office full of screens. Elena picked up the top one. It was labeled Operational Structures, Comparative Analysis. What am I looking for? Patterns, weaknesses, anything that seems off. You spent 6 months adjacent to Damien's operation. You know how traditional organizations move. We need you to tell us where the gaps are between what they say they do and what they actually do. Sarah left before Elena could ask more questions. She sat down, opened the first file, and started reading. The documents were dense: financial records, surveillance reports, organizational charts that looked more like spiderwebs than hierarchies. But as Elena read, things started clicking into place. She recognized names, connections, the way money moved through shell companies and legitimate businesses. It was all there, mapped out with a precision that made her realize Lucian's operation was far more sophisticated than she'd understood. By the time Marcus appeared, she'd filled 3 pages with notes. Finding anything interesting? He asked. You already know about the warehouse in Queens. We do. What else? The accountant, the one keeping 2 sets of books. He's not skimming for himself. He's covering for someone higher up. Probably Damien's cousin, the one who drinks. The numbers are too clean for someone working alone. Marcus pulled up a chair. Show me. Elena walked him through it, pointing out the discrepancies, the timing of certain transfers, the way expenses were categorized. Marcus listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on his tablet. Good catch, he said when she finished. We suspected the cousin, but we didn't have the proof. This gives us leverage. For what? Recruitment. Fear keeps people loyal to Damien, but money works faster. If we can flip the accountant, we can flip the cousin. If we flip the cousin, we fracture the family structure. He stood up. Keep reading. Meeting at 2 with Lucian. He'll want to hear what you found. The morning passed quickly after that. Elena worked through the files, making notes, cross-referencing information, slowly building a picture of how Damien's organization actually functioned versus how it appeared to function. The gaps were wider than she'd expected. He ran a tight ship publicly, but internally there were fractures everywhere. People skimming, lying, making side deals. The fear that kept them in line also kept them desperate. At exactly 2 o'clock, Sarah appeared again. Conference room, bring your notes. Lucian was already there when Elena arrived, sitting at the head of a glass table that probably cost more than her apartment. He looked tired but sharp, eyes scanning a tablet, while he listened to someone on speakerphone finish a sentence in rapid Mandarin. He said something back, equally rapid, then ended the call. Elena, good. Sit. She sat. Marcus and James were already there, along with 2 people she hadn't met before. A young man with wire-rimmed glasses who looked barely old enough to drink, and an older woman with silver hair and the kind of expression that suggested she suffered fools poorly. Introductions, Lucian said. Elena Voss, meet David Park, our tech lead, and Victoria Sterling, who handles external relations. Everyone, this is Elena. She's joining us as an analyst with special focus on traditional operations. Victoria looked her over with undisguised assessment. You're the wife. Ex-wife, Elena corrected. 4 hours. That's got to sting. It did. It doesn't anymore. Good. Bitterness is useful in the short term, but it clouds judgment. Sarah says you found something interesting this morning. Elena glanced at Lucian, who nodded. She opened her notes and walked them through the accountant connection, the cousin's involvement, the pattern of financial cover-ups. The room was silent while she talked. When she finished, David was already typing. "I can verify this," he said. "Give me 6 hours." "You have 3, Lucian said. He looked at Elena. "If this checks out, it's exactly the kind of intelligence we need. Traditional organizations run on family loyalty and fear, but both of those have breaking points. Find enough breaking points, apply enough pressure, the whole structure collapses." "You want to take down Damien," Elena said. "I want to make his way of doing business obsolete. There's a difference. Damien's not my enemy. His methods are. Violence, intimidation, the constant cycle of revenge and retaliation. It's inefficient, expensive, and it makes everyone involved weaker, not stronger." Lucian set his tablet down. "I'm building something different, something sustainable. But to do that, I need to understand the old system well enough to dismantle it without starting a war. And I'm supposed to help you do that. You're supposed to tell me where the weak points are. What I do with that information is my decision." Victoria leaned forward. "Question. What happens when Damien finds out you're working for us?" "He won't," Elena said. "He will, eventually. People talk. Information leaks. When that happens, what's your play?" Elena thought about it. "By the time he finds out, I'll be valuable enough that touching me would be a mistake." Confident. Practical. Damien doesn't waste resources on personal vendettas unless they serve a larger purpose. I'm only dangerous to him if I'm useful to you, so I need to make myself useful enough that I'm worth protecting. Victoria smiled. "I like her." "Everyone likes her," Lucian said. "The question is whether she can deliver. David, verify her information. Victoria, start mapping out the cousin's vulnerabilities. Marcus, James, I want updated risk assessments on all of Damien's key people by end of week. Elena, you're with me." The others filed out. Elena stayed seated, waiting. Lucian stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city stretched below them. "You did well this morning," he said. "Thank you." "But you're holding back." Elena felt her stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" "You gave us good intelligence, useful information, but you're still thinking like someone on the outside looking in. I need you to think like someone who belongs here." "I've been here 4 hours." "I know. I'm not criticizing. I'm telling you what the next step is." He turned to face her. "You know things about Damien that aren't in any file. Personal things. How he reacts under pressure, what he values, what he's afraid of. That's the intelligence I really need. You want me to tell you his weaknesses. I want you to tell me who he is when no one's watching, the man behind the reputation." Elena looked down at her hands. "He's careful, controlled. He doesn't lose his temper, doesn't make impulsive decisions. Everything is calculated. Everyone has something they're not careful about. His mother. She's the only person he actually listens to. Not his lieutenants, not his advisors. Her. If she tells him something is a bad idea, he reconsiders. Why? Because she built the organization before he inherited it. She was the one who turned his father's small-time operation into something that mattered. Damien respects that, respects her. Lucian made a note on his tablet. What else? He's afraid of seeming weak. That's why he burned the marriage so fast. He thought keeping me around would make him look soft, vulnerable. He'd rather be alone than risk anyone thinking he cares about something. Does he care about anything? Elena thought about the penthouse, the wedding, the look on Damien's face when he told her she was convenient. He cares about control. That's it. Control over his organization, his reputation, his life. Lose control, he loses everything. And if we threaten his control, he'll lash out, hard, which is why you need to be careful. Damien doesn't negotiate when he feels cornered. He eliminates threats. Lucian sat down across from her. That's exactly the kind of insight I need, not facts I can find in a file. Understanding, context. He paused. This is going to get complicated. You know that, right? I figured. Damien's going to find out eventually that you're working with me. When he does, he's going to come after you. Not physically, probably, but he'll try to discredit you, isolate you, make you seem unreliable. You need to be ready for that. I am. Are you? Because it's one thing to want revenge. It's another thing to actually stand in front of someone who destroyed you and not flinch. Elena met his eyes. He didn't destroy me. He tried. But I'm still here. Lucian smiled. Good answer. The next 3 weeks were a blur. Elena fell into a routine that felt almost normal. She'd arrive at the office by 8, spend her mornings analyzing files and reports, her afternoons in meetings where she translated traditional organizational behavior into strategies Lucian could use. She learned the rhythms of the operation, the way decisions got made, the unspoken hierarchies that governed who spoke when. She also learned that Lucian's organization was nothing like Damien's. There was no fear here. People disagreed openly, challenged each other's ideas, admitted mistakes without worrying about consequences. It was strange at first, almost uncomfortable. Elena kept waiting for someone to get punished for speaking out of turn, for offering criticism, for being wrong, but it never happened. We're not running a dictatorship, Sarah explained one afternoon when Elena mentioned it. Fear makes people obedient, but obedience isn't the same as competence. Lucian wants people who think, who question, who make the operation better by refusing to accept the status quo. Doesn't that create chaos? Sometimes, but chaos is better than stagnation. Damien's organization works the same way it did 20 years ago because no one's allowed to suggest improvements. We're constantly evolving because everyone's encouraged to find better ways. It made sense. It also made Elena realize how trapped she'd felt in Damien's world without knowing it. She'd been so focused on fitting in, on not making waves, that she'd never questioned whether the way things were was the way things should be. Here, questions were expected. By week 4, Elena had become a regular presence in strategy meetings. Lucian would present a situation, usually something involving Damien's organization or another traditional operation, and ask her to walk through how the other side would respond. At first, she'd been hesitant, worried about being wrong. But Lucian didn't punish wrong answers. He just asked why she thought that way, what assumptions she was making, whether there were other possibilities. It was like being taught how to think instead of what to think. You're getting better at this, Victoria said after one particularly long meeting. They were in the break room, making coffee that tasted like actual coffee instead of cafeteria sludge. When you started, you were giving us facts. Now you're giving us analysis. Is that good? It's essential. Facts are easy. Anyone with enough resources can gather facts. Understanding what they mean, that's harder. You're starting to see patterns most people miss. Elena poured milk into her coffee. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you all being so nice to me? I'm Damien Vale's ex-wife. I have every reason to feed you bad information, to sabotage things from the inside. But everyone just treats me like I belong here. Victoria took a sip of her coffee. You want the real answer? Yes. Because Lucian's an excellent judge of character, and he thinks you're genuine. And because every single person in this office has been underestimated at some point. I was told I was too old to pivot from corporate law to this. Marcus was told he was too soft for the industry. Sarah was dismissed because she's a woman in a male-dominated field. David was laughed at for being young. We all know what it feels like to be written off. She set her cup down. Damien threw you away because he thought you were disposable. We're betting you're not. What if you're wrong? Then we learn from it and move on. But I don't think we're wrong. That night, alone in her apartment, Elena thought about what Victoria had said, about being underestimated, about proving people wrong. She thought about Damien's face when he'd called her convenient, like she was a piece of furniture he'd rented for an event. She thought about how badly she wanted to prove him wrong. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow, 10 a.m., the place on 5th. Come alone. No signature. But Elena knew the tone, knew the cadence. She stared at the message for a long time before responding. Who is this? The reply came immediately. Your husband. Elena's hand started shaking. She put the phone down, picked it up again, stared at the screen like it might explode. Damien never contacted her directly. The divorce had been handled by lawyers, the settlement deposited into her account without comment. In 2 months, she hadn't heard a single word from him. Until now. She should tell Lucian. That was protocol. Any contact with Damien's organization got reported immediately. But something stopped her. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the need to face him on her own terms. Maybe just the desire to see if she'd flinch when he was standing in front of her. She typed back, "Fine, 10 a.m." Then she deleted Lucian's number from her recent calls and tried to sleep. She couldn't. The cafe on 5th was crowded when Elena arrived the next morning. She dressed carefully again, professional but not trying too hard, the kind of outfit that said she had her life together, even if that was a complete lie. She ordered coffee she didn't want and sat at a table near the back where she could see the door. Damien arrived at exactly 10 o'clock. He looked the same. Perfectly tailored suit, dark hair styled precisely, the kind of presence that made other people nervous just by proximity. He spotted her immediately, walked over without hesitation, sat down across from her like they were old friends meeting for a casual chat. "Elena." "Damien. You look well. You look like you always look." He almost smiled. Almost. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure either." A waitress appeared, took his order, disappeared. Damien folded his hands on the table and looked at her with an expression that might have been concern if he were capable of concern. "How have you been?" he asked. "Is that a real question, or are we just doing pleasantries?" "It's real. I've been fine, adjusting, figuring out what comes next." "I heard you got a job." Elena's stomach dropped, but she kept her face neutral. "Where'd you hear that?" "I hear things. It's what I do." He paused. "Finance sector, right? Analysis work?" "Something like that." "Good. You always were smarter than people gave you credit for." The comment landed wrong, like he was trying to be kind but didn't quite know how. Elena took a drink of her coffee to buy time. "Why am I here, Damien?" "I wanted to see you." "Why?" "Because I've been thinking about the wedding, about what I said, how I handled things." "You mean how you married me and divorced me in the same night?" "Yes." "That." Elena waited. Damien looked uncomfortable, which was satisfying in a petty way. He wasn't used to being the one who had to explain himself. "I was too harsh," he said finally. "The way I ended things. You deserve better." "I deserve the truth." "I gave you the truth." "You gave me a weapon disguised as truth. You told me I was convenient, disposable, temporary. You said those things to hurt me, not to be honest." Damien's jaw tightened. "Maybe." "Not maybe. Definitely. You wanted me to leave quietly, so you made sure I'd be too hurt to fight back." Elena set her cup down. "It worked, by the way. I left. I stayed quiet. I signed your papers and took your money and disappeared exactly like you wanted." "Then why do you sound angry?" "Because I am angry. I'm furious. But not for the reasons you think." "Explain." Elena leaned forward. "I'm not angry that you didn't love me. I knew what I was signing up for. Business arrangement, strategic marriage, whatever you want to call it. I understood that. What I'm angry about is that you didn't even respect me enough to be straight with me from the beginning. You let me think I mattered. You let me plan a future. You let me stand up in front of your entire organization and promise you my life, knowing you were going to throw it back in my face hours later. I couldn't tell you beforehand." "Why not?" "Because you wouldn't have gone through with it." Exactly. Which means you knew it was wrong. You knew it was cruel, and you did it anyway because your plan was more important than my dignity." Damien looked at her for a long moment. "You're right." Elena blinked. "What?" "You're right. I handled it badly. I could have found another way. I didn't because it was easier not to." He paused. "I'm sorry." The apology hit her like a punch. She'd expected defensiveness, excuses, the same cold rationalization he'd given her in the penthouse. Not this, not actual acknowledgement of wrongdoing. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked. "Because I've been watching you, seeing how you've adapted. You're doing well, Elena. Better than I expected." "Better than you wanted, you mean?" "Maybe that too. And now you're worried I might be a problem." Damien's expression shifted slightly. "Should I be?" "I don't know. Should you?" They stared at each other across the table. Elena could feel her heart pounding, could feel the weight of the conversation shifting into dangerous territory. She needed to be careful. One wrong word and Damien would know she was working against him. "I'm not your enemy," she said carefully. "I'm just trying to build a life." With Lucian Cross. There it was. Elena forced herself not to react. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me. I know you're working for him. I know you've been feeding him information about my organization. I know everything, Elena." "Then why are we having coffee?" "Because I want to give you a chance to stop." Elena laughed. She couldn't help it. The absurdity of the situation, of Damien sitting there acting like he was being generous, was too much. "You want me to quit my job because it makes you uncomfortable?" "I want you to quit before you get hurt. Lucian's playing a dangerous game, going up against traditional organizations, trying to change how things work. It's noble. It's also stupid. And when it falls apart, everyone close to him falls with it. Maybe it won't fall apart. It will. Because people like Lucian don't understand how power really works. He thinks he can negotiate his way to the top, make deals, build consensus. But real power doesn't come from consensus. It comes from fear, from knowing that if people cross you, there are consequences. Like throwing your wife away hours after marrying her? Damien's eyes went cold. That was different. How? Because I was protecting you. From what? From becoming a target. From being used against me. He stopped. It doesn't matter. The point is, working for Lucian puts you in danger. Real danger. Walk away now, and I'll make sure you're protected. Stay, and you're on your own. Elena stood up. I've been on my own since you divorced me. I'm used to it. Elena. Thanks for the coffee, Damien. Don't contact me again. She left before he could respond, walked 3 blocks before she let herself stop and breathe. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. But she'd done it. She'd faced him and hadn't flinched. She pulled out her phone and called Lucian. He answered immediately. What's wrong? Damien knows. About me working for you. About everything. Silence on the other end. Then, where are you? 5th and Marion. Stay there. I'm sending someone. 10 minutes later, Marcus pulled up in a black sedan. Elena got in without being asked. They drove in silence until they were clear of the area. Then Marcus glanced at her. You okay? I think so. What did he say? Elena told him everything. The apology, the warning, the thinly veiled threat. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. He's scared, Marcus said when she finished. Of what? Of you. Of what you represent. You're proof that his way of doing things doesn't work, that you can survive being thrown away by him and come out stronger. That's dangerous to his entire worldview. He told me to quit. Of course he did, because as long as you're working with us, you're a reminder that he's not untouchable. Marcus turned onto the highway. Question is, what do you want to do? What do you mean? Do you want to quit? Walk away? Take his protection? Go back to being invisible? Elena thought about the office, the meetings, the feeling of actually mattering. No. Then we protect you, starting now. How? You move. New apartment, better security, closer to the office. You don't go anywhere alone. You check in twice a day, and you tell us immediately if Damien or anyone from his organization contacts you again. That sounds like witness protection. It's smart protection. Damien made a move today, showing up, making threats. That's him testing you, seeing if you'll crack. You didn't, but he's not going to stop there. They pulled up to the office. Lucian was waiting in the lobby. He looked more serious than Elena had ever seen him. Come on, he said. We need to talk. They went to Lucian's private office, a space Elena had only seen once before during her initial interview. It was smaller than she'd expected, more functional than impressive. A desk covered in papers, 2 chairs that looked comfortable but weren't trying to be. Windows that overlooked the city but were tinted dark enough that no one could see in. Lucian gestured for her to sit, then closed the door. Tell me exactly what happened, he said. Elena went through it again, slower this time, including details she'd left out when talking to Marcus. The way Damien had looked at her, the careful phrasing of his apology, the shift in his tone when he'd mentioned Lucian's name. He wasn't threatening me, she said. Not directly. It was more like he was warning me. Like he genuinely thinks I'm in danger and he's trying to protect me from making a mistake. Do you believe that? I don't know. Maybe part of him believes it. But the bigger part just wants me gone because I'm inconvenient again. Lucian sat on the edge of his desk. He's right about one thing. You are in danger. Not because of him specifically, but because you're visible now. You're not just Damien's discarded wife anymore. You're someone with access, with knowledge, with value. That makes you a target for anyone who wants leverage against me or against him. So what do? You keep working, but we adjust how you work. He pulled out his phone, sent a quick message. Victoria's handling your relocation. New apartment, better building, security on the ground floor. Marcus is coordinating transportation. From now on, you don't drive yourself anywhere. You don't take cabs. You use our cars with our drivers. That seems excessive. It's necessary. Damien showing up today wasn't random. He's making a move, testing boundaries, seeing how we react. If we ignore it, he'll push harder. If we overreact, we look weak. So we react proportionally. We protect you without making it look like we're scared. And what about my work? Do I stop analyzing his organization? No, you go deeper. Because now we know he's watching, which means we can feed him information. Make him think he knows what we're doing while we do something else entirely. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. You want to use me as bait. I want to use you as an asset. There's a difference. Bait is passive. You'd be active, helping us control what Damien sees, what he thinks, what moves he makes. That sounds dangerous. It is. Which is why you can say no. Right now. Walk away, take the settlement money, disappear somewhere Damien will never bother looking for you. I won't blame you. No one will. Elena looked at him. Lucian's face was serious but not manipulative. He meant it. She could leave, go back to being invisible, safe, irrelevant. I'm not leaving, she said. You're sure? I'm sure. Why? The question caught her off guard. Elena thought about it, about the penthouse and the wedding and the 2 months of emptiness that followed, about the moment she'd decided to stop grieving and start watching, about the feeling she got now when she walked into the office and people treated her like she mattered. Because Damien was wrong about me, she said, and I want him to know it. I want him to see exactly what he threw away. Lucian nodded slowly. Good answer, but be careful. Revenge is a strong motivator, but it's also limiting. At some point, you need to want this for yourself, not just to prove something to him. I do want it for myself. Then we move forward. Victoria will have your new place ready by tonight. Pack what you need from the old apartment, leave everything else. Fresh start. The meeting ended, and Elena found herself in Victoria's office an hour later, looking at photos of an apartment that felt too nice to be real. High floor, actual security, a kitchen that had countertops instead of just a hot plate, and hope. It's too much, Elena said. Victoria didn't look up from her computer. It's standard for anyone working at your level. Sarah has the same setup, so does Marcus. I've been here a month, and you've already provided intelligence that shifted 3 of our strategic initiatives. That's worth protecting. Victoria pulled up a building schematic. Security guard downstairs, cameras in the hallways, keycard access only. You'll have a panic button that connects directly to our response team. Use it if anything feels wrong. Don't wait to be sure. This is insane. This is careful. There's a difference. Victoria finally looked at her. You're not in corporate finance anymore, Elena. You're in the part of the business where people actually matter, which means people who want to hurt us will try to use you to do it. The apartment isn't a gift, it's insurance. Elena moved that night. 2 of Lucien's security people helped her pack the few things she'd accumulated in the old place, mostly clothes and books and a plant she'd bought in a moment of optimism that had since died from neglect. The new apartment was 15 floors higher and felt like a different world. Clean, secure, the kind of place where the neighbors probably didn't scream at each other at 2 in the morning. She unpacked slowly, putting things in drawers that actually closed properly, hanging clothes in a closet that had real hangers. It felt surreal. 3 months ago, she'd been planning a wedding. Now she was living in a secure apartment provided by her ex-husband's rival while working to dismantle everything Damien had built. Her phone rang. Sarah. You settled in? Getting there. Good. Lucian wants you in early tomorrow, 6 a.m. Something came up. What kind of something? The kind we talk about in person. Get some sleep. Elena didn't sleep. She tried, but her brain wouldn't stop running through scenarios. Damien knowing she worked for Lucian. Damien making moves, Damien doing whatever Damien did when people became problems. She stared at the ceiling until her alarm went off, then gave up and got ready. The office was almost empty when she arrived at 6. Just Lucian, Sarah, and David in the main conference room, surrounded by laptops and files and the kind of organized chaos that suggested they'd been there for hours. "Coffee's fresh," Sarah said without looking up. Elena poured herself a cup and sat down. "What happened?" Lucian turned his laptop around. The screen showed a news article, local outlet, small headline. "Accountant found dead in apparent suicide." Elena's stomach dropped. "The accountant? Damien's accountant?" "The same one you identified 4 weeks ago. The one keeping 2 sets of books." "When did this happen?" "Last night. Around midnight. Pills and alcohol, staged to look like he couldn't handle the pressure." David pulled up another screen. "Except the surveillance cameras in his building went offline at 11:30, came back online at 12:15. Whoever did this was professional." "Damien found out we were looking at him," Elena said quietly. "That's the assumption, but here's the interesting part." Lucian pulled up another file. "Before he died, the accountant sent an email, time-stamped at 11:45. 15 minutes after the cameras went down, 30 minutes before the official time of death." "What did it say?" "It's encrypted. David's working on it. But the fact that he sent it at all suggests he knew something was coming. Maybe he was trying to protect himself. Maybe he was trying to give someone else information." Lucian closed the laptop. "Either way, Damien just showed us he's willing to kill his own people to protect his operation." Elena felt cold. She'd known Damien was dangerous, known he ran an organization built on violence, but knowing it abstractly and seeing the direct evidence were different things. "You think this is because of what I told you?" "I think this is because Damien's under pressure and he's eliminating vulnerabilities. Whether that's connected to your information or something else, we don't know yet." "But it might be." "It might be," Lucian agreed, "which is why we're accelerating the timeline. No more slow analysis. We need to move now before Damien cleans house completely." "Move how?" Sarah spread out a series of organizational charts. "We've identified 3 key people in Damien's operation who are vulnerable to recruitment. The cousin you mentioned, a lieutenant named Torres, who's been passed over for promotion twice, and a woman named Chen, who handles procurement. If we can flip all 3, we fracture his inner circle enough that he can't operate effectively. And if we can't flip them, then we isolate them, make them radioactive, force Damien to cut them loose, which creates resentment and instability." Sarah pointed to the cousin's photo. "We start with him. He's the weakest link. Gambling debts, drinking problem, pressure from his family. Give him a way out and he'll probably take it." Elena studied the chart. "His name's Robert Vale. He's Damien's mother's sister's son. She adores him, which is the only reason Damien tolerates him." "What else?" "He's not stupid. Weak, yes, but not stupid. If you approach him wrong, he'll run straight to Damien out of fear. You need to make it seem like helping you is safer than staying loyal." Victoria walked in carrying food from somewhere that smelled expensive. "Did I miss the strategy session?" "Just started," Lucian said. "Elena was about to tell us how to flip Robert Vale." Elena took a breath. "You don't approach him directly. You approach his girlfriend. Her name's Michelle. She's a law student, smart, ambitious, completely aware that Robert's going nowhere. She's with him because he's connected, but she's not loyal to Damien. Convince her that Robert's safer with you, she'll convince Robert." "How do we convince her?" "Money, security, and the promise that when this is over, she'll have connections that actually matter instead of just a boyfriend with a famous last name." Victoria smiled. "I like it. I'll make contact." "Carefully," Elena said. "Michelle's smart enough to smell a setup. You need to make it look organic." Mutual friend introduction. Casual conversation. "Let her think it's her idea." "I've done this before," Victoria said dryly, "but thanks for the advice." The meeting ran for another 2 hours. They mapped out approaches for each target, identified backup plans, discussed contingencies. By the time it ended, Elena's head was spinning with details and possibilities. She went back to her desk, tried to focus on the regular work, but couldn't stop thinking about the accountant. She pulled up the news article again, read it 3 times. The official story was suicide, depression, work stress. But the details were wrong. The accountant had a daughter graduating college next month. He just bought tickets to her ceremony. People planning to die don't buy tickets to future events. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it, debating whether to answer. Could be spam. Could be something worse. She answered. Elena Voss? The voice was female, unfamiliar, nervous. Who is this? My name is Jennifer Chang. I'm an attorney. I represent the estate of Richard Morrison. The accountant. Elena sat up straighter. I'm listening. Mr. Morrison left instructions that if anything happened to him, certain materials should be delivered to certain people. Your name is on his list. What kind of materials? I can't discuss that over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m., my office? Where? The attorney gave an address downtown. Elena wrote it down, mind racing. How did Mr. Morrison know my name? I can't answer that. Tomorrow at 2, Ms. Voss. Come alone. The line went dead. Elena sat there for a long moment, then walked straight to Lucian's office. He was on a call but waved her in. She waited until he finished. The accountant's attorney just called me, she said. He left me something. Instructions to deliver materials if anything happened to him. Lucian's expression shifted. When's the meeting? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. You're not going alone. She said, come alone. I don't care what she said. This could be a setup. Damien using the attorney to draw you out. Or it could be exactly what it sounds like. The accountant knew he was in danger, and he left insurance. Insurance he decided to leave with you specifically. Why? Elena thought about it. Maybe because I'm the one person Damien wouldn't expect. I'm too new, too disconnected from the old organization. Or maybe the accountant figured out I was working with you and thought I was the safest option. Or maybe Damien told the attorney to contact you as part of a larger plan. Then we find out tomorrow. Elena crossed her arms. I'm going. With security if you want, but I'm going. Lucian studied her. You're getting bolder. I'm getting tired of being scared. There's a difference between being bold and being reckless. I know. This is bold. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded. Fine. But Marcus goes with you. He stays in the lobby, you wear a wire, and if anything feels wrong, you leave immediately. Deal. The attorney's office was in a building that had seen better decades. The lobby had the kind of wear that suggested the landlord had given up somewhere around 1987. Marcus looked around with obvious distaste. You sure about this? He asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Wire's active. I'll be listening. Anything weird, say the word unfortunately, and I'm coming up. Elena took the elevator to the 7th floor. The attorney's office was at the end of a dim hallway, door half open. She knocked anyway. Come in. Jennifer Chang was younger than Elena expected, maybe 30, with the tired eyes of someone who'd chosen criminal defense and was regretting it. Her office was small, cluttered, smelling faintly of old coffee and stress. Miss Voss, thank you for coming. She gestured to a chair. I'll get right to it. Richard Morrison was a client of mine for 6 years, mostly estate planning, some contract review. 3 months ago, he came to me with unusual instructions. What kind of instructions? He gave me a secure drive, told me that if anything happened to him, anything that looked even remotely suspicious, I was to contact specific people and arrange delivery of copies. She pulled a small hard drive from her desk drawer. You're one of those people. What's on it? I don't know. It's encrypted. Richard said the people he was sending it to would know what to do with it. Elena took the drive carefully. Who else is getting copies? I can't tell you that. Attorney-client privilege extends to his instructions. He's dead. The privilege survives death. Jennifer leaned back. Look, I don't know what Richard was involved in. I don't want to know. But he was terrified the last time I saw him. Kept looking over his shoulder, jumping at sounds. He knew something was coming. Did he say what? No, just that he'd gotten in too deep and couldn't get out. He said if they came for him, at least he could make sure the truth got out. Elena stood up. Thank you for this. Miss Voss, be careful. Whatever's on that drive, people died to keep it secret. Richard knew that. That's why he set this up. Elena left the office, drive clutched in her hand. Marcus was waiting in the lobby, already moving toward the exit. We got it? He asked. We got it. They were back at the office 20 minutes later. David had the drive connected to an isolated system within 5 minutes, decryption software running while everyone gathered around. "This is military-grade encryption," David said. "Whoever set this up knew what they were doing." "How long to crack it?" Lucian asked. "Could be hours. Could be days." "We don't have days." David's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Then I'll make it hours." It took 3. 3 hours of watching progress bars crawl across screens, of David muttering to himself in 3 different languages, of Elena sitting in a conference room trying not to think about the fact that a man had died to get this information to her. Finally, David looked up. "I'm in." They crowded around his screen. The drive contained dozens of files, spreadsheets, scanned documents, audio recordings. David opened the first spreadsheet. "Financial records," Sarah said. "These are Damien's real books, not the ones he shows his people, the actual numbers." "Look at this," Victoria pointed. "Money going to offshore accounts, hundreds of thousands every month." "That's normal for this kind of operation," Elena said. "They all hide money offshore. Not from their own organization. Look at the memo field, personal discretionary. He's been skimming from his own people." Lucian leaned closer. "How much?" David ran the numbers. "Over the last 5 years? Close to 40 million? The room went quiet. Elena felt her stomach turn over. 40 million. Damien had been stealing from his own operation, from the people who trusted him, who bled for him, while preaching loyalty and family and the importance of the organization above all else. "This is leverage," Victoria said quietly. "His people find out he's been robbing them. They'll tear him apart." "We need to verify it first," Lucian said. Cross-reference with other sources. Make sure it's real." "It's real," Elena said. Everyone looked at her. "I've seen Damien's legitimate accounts. When we were getting married, his lawyer showed me the prenup assets. The numbers there were way lower than what he should have had based on the organization's earnings. I thought maybe he was hiding money from me. Turns out he was hiding it from everyone. Can you verify the accounts?" "Some of them, the ones I saw. But it'll take time." "Do it. Sarah, David, start pulling together a presentation. If we're going to use this, we need it airtight. No room for Damien to claim it's fabricated." They worked through the night. Elena cross-referenced account numbers. Sarah built the narrative. David compiled the evidence. By dawn, they had a case that would destroy Damien's credibility with his own people. "Question is, how do we deploy it?" Victoria asked. They were all exhausted, running on coffee and adrenaline. "Do we leak it publicly? Send it directly to his lieutenants? Give it to his mother?" "His mother," Elena said. Everyone looked at her again. She built the organization. She handed it to Damien with the understanding that he'd protect it, grow it, honor what she'd created. Finding out he's been stealing from it will break something fundamental, and she's the only person who can remove him without starting a war. "Will she believe it?" Lucian asked. "If it's presented right, yes. She's ruthless, but she's not blind. Show her the evidence, let her verify it herself, she'll act." "And if she decides to kill the messenger instead?" Elena met his eyes. "Then I guess we find out if I'm as valuable as you think I am." "You're not delivering this personally." "Why not?" "I'm Damien's ex-wife. I have a reason to want him exposed. It'll seem like revenge, which makes it more believable than if it comes from you. It also makes you a target." "I'm already a target. Might as well make it count." Lucian looked at Victoria, who shrugged. "She's not wrong. Coming from her, it looks personal. Coming from us, it looks like warfare." "I don't like it," Lucian said. "You don't have to like it," Elena said. "You just have to let me do it." He stared at her for a long moment. Then reluctantly, he nodded. "Fine, but we do this carefully. Set up a meeting through proper channels. Make it look legitimate, and you wear a wire the entire time." "When?" "Soon, before Damien realizes what we have." Lucian stood up. "Everyone get some rest. We move on this in 48 hours." Elena went back to her apartment, collapsed on her couch, and stared at the ceiling. In 2 days, she was going to sit across from Damien's mother and destroy his life. The woman who'd been polite but distant at the wedding, who'd looked at Elena like she was a temporary inconvenience that would be gone soon enough. She'd been right about the temporary part, wrong about the inconvenience. Elena's phone buzzed, a message from Lucian. "You sure about this?" She typed back, "No, but I'm doing it anyway." His response came immediately. "Good. Get some sleep. You're going to need it." Elena closed her eyes. She didn't sleep, but she tried. The meeting with Damien's mother took 2 days to arrange, which felt like 2 years. Victoria handled the outreach, positioning it as Elena wanting to personally apologize for any disruption the divorce had caused to the family. Formal, respectful. Exactly the kind of thing that would appeal to a woman who valued appearances above almost everything else. Catherine Vale agreed to meet at her estate outside the city, which made Marcus extremely nervous. "Going into her territory puts you at a disadvantage," he said the morning of the meeting. They were in the office, doing final preparations. Elena was dressed conservatively, nothing flashy, the kind of outfit that said she knew her place. "You'll be surrounded by her security, her people, playing by her rules." "That's exactly why she'll listen," Elena said. "I'm coming to her, showing deference. It makes the information more credible, not less." Sarah adjusted the wire hidden under Elena's blazer. "Audio's clean. We'll hear everything. If anything goes sideways, Marcus will be a quarter-mile away. 5 minutes response time, maybe less if he breaks traffic laws." "Which I will," Marcus confirmed. Lucian had been quiet all morning, standing by the window with his coffee, watching the city wake up. Now he turned around. "Last chance to back out." "I'm not backing out." Catherine Vale is not someone to underestimate. She's been running criminal organizations since before you were born. She's seen every play, heard every lie, survived every betrayal. You walk in there with accusations about her son, she might decide you're the problem that needs eliminating. "I know." "Do you?" Because knowing it intellectually and feeling it when you're sitting across from her are very different things. Elena picked up the folder containing the evidence. Copies, not originals. David had the originals in 3 separate secure locations. "I watched Damien throw me away like I was nothing. I survived that. I can survive his mother." "Surviving isn't the same as winning." "Then I'll do both." The drive to Catherine's estate took 40 minutes through increasingly rural roads. The house, when it finally appeared, was exactly what Elena expected. Old money architecture trying to look humble and failing. Stone walls, manicured gardens, security cameras disguised as decorative lighting. Marcus dropped her at the gate. "Wire's active," he said. "Say the word, and I'm coming in." "I'll be fine." "That's not what I said." Elena got out of the car and walked to the intercom. A voice answered immediately, professional and cold. She gave her name. The gates opened. The walk to the front door felt longer than it was. Elena could feel cameras tracking her movement, could sense the security she couldn't see. This was Catherine's kingdom, built over decades of careful violence and strategic marriages. One wrong word, and Elena wouldn't make it back to the gate. The door opened before she could knock. A man in his 50s, military bearing, no expression. He gestured for her to follow without speaking. They walked through rooms that probably had names, past furniture that cost more than most people's houses, into a sitting room where Catherine Vale waited. She looked exactly like she had at the wedding. Mid-60s, silver hair styled perfectly, wearing clothes that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. She sat in a chair that might have been a throne in another life, hands folded in her lap, expression unreadable. "Elena, how unexpected to hear from you." "Mrs. Vale, thank you for seeing me." "I almost didn't. My son was very clear that you were no longer part of this family." I'm not. I'm not here as family. I'm here as someone who owes you an explanation." Catherine's eyebrow raised slightly. "For what?" "For what I'm about to show you." Elena set the folder on the table between them. "Before I do, I need you to understand something. This isn't revenge. This isn't me trying to hurt Damien because he hurt me. This is me trying to protect what you built." Interesting phrasing, considering you were married to my son for approximately 4 hours. "Which is exactly why I know I don't matter to you. But the organization does, the legacy does. What your family has built over 40 years matters. And you think it needs protecting from my own son. I think it needs protecting from what your son has been doing." Catherine didn't move, but something shifted in her expression, a sharpness. "Show me." Elena opened the folder, pulled out the first document, a summary sheet that David had prepared showing the overview of the financial discrepancies. She slid it across the table. Over the last 5 years, Approximately $40 million has been moved from the organization's accounts into personal holdings controlled solely by Damien. Money that should have been reinvested, distributed, used to strengthen operations. Instead, it was diverted. Catherine picked up the paper. Read it slowly. Her face showed nothing. These are serious accusations. They're not accusations, they're facts. The supporting documentation is in the folder. Account numbers, transaction dates, transfer records, all of it verified. Verified by whom? Independent financial analysts, people with no connection to your organization or to mine. Yours! Catherine set the paper down. So you are working against my son. I'm working for someone who believes criminal organizations should evolve past the old ways, past the violence and fear and constant territorial wars. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because what Damien's been doing threatens everything you built, regardless of who benefits from exposing it. Why should I believe this is real? You could have fabricated all of it. I could have, but you can verify it yourself. The account numbers are real. The transactions are real. Have your own people look into it. If I'm lying, you'll know within 48 hours. Catherine stood up, walked to the window, looked out at her gardens, her estate, the physical manifestation of decades of calculated decisions. Elena waited, barely breathing, aware that the next few minutes would determine whether she walked out of here or disappeared. My son married you for strategic purposes, Catherine said without turning around, to present a certain image to certain people at a critical time. The marriage was never meant to last. You understand that, yes? I do now. And yet you seem personally invested in his downfall. I'm invested in the truth. What he did to me was cruel, but it was honest in its own way. He told me exactly what I was to him. Convenient, temporary, a means to an end. I can accept that. Elena stood up. But stealing $40 million from the people who risked their lives for him while preaching loyalty and family? That's different. That's betrayal on a scale that undermines everything. Catherine turned around. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. For the first time, something that might have been amusement flickered across Catherine's face. My son chose poorly when he dismissed you. He did. These documents. You have originals? Secured in multiple locations. This is a courtesy copy. Courtesy. Interesting word choice. Catherine walked back to her chair, sat down, picked up the summary sheet again. What do you want in exchange for this information? Nothing. Everyone wants something. I want Damien to face consequences for what he's done, not from me, from the people he betrayed. If that helps the person I work for, fine. If it doesn't, I still want it. Catherine studied her for a long moment. You've changed since the wedding. I've had to. Yes, you have. She set the paper down. I'll look into this. If it's accurate, I'll handle it. If it's fabricated, you'll regret bringing it to me. It's accurate. Then we'll speak again soon. You can see yourself out. Elena picked up the folder, left the summary and supporting documents on the table, and walked out. Her hands didn't start shaking until she was through the gate and back in Marcus's car. How'd it go? He asked. I don't know. She didn't shoot me, so that's probably good. Did she believe you? I think so. But she's not going to act on belief. She's going to verify everything first. Which means we have maybe 2 days before Damien finds out what we did. Elena leaned her head back against the seat. Then we'd better be ready. The verification came faster than expected. 26 hours after the meeting, Victoria got a call from one of Catherine's attorneys requesting additional documentation. David sent over encrypted files containing the transaction logs, account statements, and audio recordings of the accountant discussing the transfers. Everything Richard Morrison had died to protect. She's moving, Lucian said when they gathered to discuss it. Catherine doesn't waste time on false leads. If she's asking for more, it means her initial review confirmed enough to warrant deeper investigation. What happens when she confirms it all? Sarah asked. She'll confront Damien, probably privately first, give him a chance to explain. And when he can't? Then she removes him, quietly, efficiently, with minimal disruption to operations. Lucian looked at Elena. You gave her the evidence, but the decision is hers. Whatever happens next, it's out of our hands. I know. Are you okay with that? Elena thought about it. Was she okay with Damien's fate being determined by his mother instead of by her, by the courts, by some satisfying public reckoning? Yes, because this isn't about me getting revenge. It's about him facing the consequences of his actual crimes, not the personal ones against me. Mature answer. Don't sound so surprised. Victoria's phone rang. She looked at the screen, then at Lucian. It's Catherine's office. They want to meet. When? Today. 4 p.m. Her attorney's office downtown. Victoria paused. She's requesting Elena's presence. The room went quiet. Elena felt her stomach drop. Why would she want me there? Could be a lot of reasons. Maybe she has questions. Maybe she wants to negotiate. Maybe she's planning to eliminate the leak. Comforting. I'm just listing possibilities. Lucian stood up. Elena doesn't go alone. I'm going with her. She asked for Elena specifically. I don't care. This could be a setup. Catherine finds out we're the ones behind the investigation. She might decide to solve multiple problems at once. Or, Elena said, she might want to talk to the person who brought her the evidence, face to face, make sure I'm credible. That's optimistic. I'm feeling optimistic. She wasn't, but she went anyway with Lucian beside her and Marcus trailing 2 cars behind. The attorney's office was in a building that screamed legitimacy, all marble and brass, and the kind of quiet that comes from expensive soundproofing. They were shown to a conference room where Catherine waited with 2 attorneys and a man Elena didn't recognize, but who radiated danger in a way that suggested head of security. Catherine stood when they entered. Elena, and you must be Lucian Cross. Mrs. Vale. I didn't request your presence, and yet here I am. Catherine smiled slightly. Sit, both of you. They sat. The attorneys remained standing, which felt intentional. Catherine folded her hands on the table. I've verified the information Elena provided. All of it. The accounts exist. The transfers happened. My son has been systematically stealing from the organization for 5 years. Elena felt relief and dread in equal measure. Relief that she'd been believed. Dread at what came next. I assume you have questions, Lucian said. Several, starting with why you chose to bring this to me instead of using it against Damien directly. Because using it directly would start a war. Bringing it to you keeps things internal, family business. And you care about avoiding war because? Because war is expensive, unpredictable, and bad for business. I'm trying to build something sustainable. That's harder to do when the city's in chaos. Catherine nodded slowly. You're not like the others who've challenged the traditional structure. You actually think long-term. I try. Which makes you more dangerous, not less. She turned to Elena. And you? You brought me evidence that will destroy my son's position, possibly his life. Why? Because he deserved it, Elena said. Not for what he did to me, for what he did to the people who trusted him. Honest answer, probably stupid, but honest. Catherine pulled out a document. My son will be removed from leadership effective immediately. The organization will undergo restructuring, new management, new policies, new direction. This will take time and create vulnerability. You're worried someone will move against you during the transition, Lucian said. I'm certain someone will. Probably multiple someones. Which brings me to my proposal. She slid the document across. A temporary alliance, your organization and mine. Mutual protection during the restructuring period. You help me stabilize things. I help you establish legitimacy in circles that currently see you as an upstart. Lucian picked up the document. Read it. This is more than temporary. The protection agreement is temporary, 6 months. The consultation arrangement is longer, 2 years, renewable. I'm old, Mr. Cross. I built this organization, but I won't live forever. When I'm gone, I'd rather see it evolve into something sustainable than collapse into warfare. You're positioned to help with that evolution. What about Damien? Damien will be handled, internally. You need not concern yourself with the details. Elena felt cold. What does handled mean? Catherine looked at her. It means he'll be removed from power and prevented from retaliating. The specifics are not your concern. I didn't bring you this information so you could kill him. I'm not going to kill him. He's my son. But I'm also not going to let him destroy what I've built. There's a difference between family and business, Elena. I thought you'd learned that.
I have, but I need to know he'll be safe. He'll be alive. That's as much safety as he deserves after what he's done. Catherine stood up. Mr. Cross, you have 48 hours to review the agreement and decide. Elena, you're free to go. Thank you for your courage in bringing this forward.
They were dismissed. Simple as that. Elena found herself in the elevator, then the lobby, then the car, without quite remembering the transitions. That went better than I expected, Marcus said from the driver's seat. Did it? Elena felt numb. She's going to destroy him. She's going to remove him from power. There's a difference. Is there? Lucian touched her arm. You did the right thing. Damien betrayed his own people. What Catherine does with that information is her decision, not yours. I know. It just feels different now that it's real. Buyer's remorse? Something like that. They drove back to the office. Lucian spent the next day reviewing Catherine's proposal with his attorneys, his advisors, his inner circle. Elena wasn't part of those discussions, which felt right. She'd done her part, delivered the evidence, set things in motion. What happened next was above her level. She tried to go back to regular work, analysis, reports, the comfortable rhythm of information gathering, but she couldn't focus. Couldn't stop thinking about Damien, about what Catherine meant by handled, about whether she'd just signed off on something she'd regret. On the second day, Sarah found her staring at her computer screen without actually seeing it. You okay? I don't know. Want to talk about it? Not really. Sarah sat down anyway. I know what you're feeling. The guilt. The wondering if you did the right thing. I felt the same way the first time I helped take down someone I used to know. How'd you get past it? I reminded myself that consequences aren't the same as punishment. Damien didn't face consequences because of you. He faced them because of what he did. You just made sure the truth came out. That sounds like something Lucian would say. He probably did say it. Doesn't make it wrong. Elena looked at her. What if Catherine kills him? She won't. Catherine's practical. Dead sons create martyrs and succession problems. Removed sons can be controlled, managed, kept quiet. She'll find a way to neutralize him without eliminating him. You sound very sure. I've studied her for 3 years. She's ruthless, but she's not wasteful. Damien's her son. That means something, even to her. The reassurance helped, a little, enough to get Elena through the rest of the day. That night, alone in her apartment, she tried to sleep and failed. Tried to read and couldn't focus. Finally, she just sat by the window and watched the city lights blur into patterns that meant nothing. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? It's me. Damien's voice. Elena's hand tightened on the phone. How did you get this number? Does it matter? I need to talk to you. We have nothing to talk about. My mother's freezing my accounts, locking me out of the organization, and I know it's because of you. It's because of what you did. What I did? What I did was protect this family, build our holdings, make us stronger. You stole $40 million. Silence. Then, she showed you the documents. She verified them. I just gave her the information. Information you got from Richard, who I had to deal with because he was going to expose things that needed to stay hidden. You killed him. I protected the organization. You murdered him to cover your own theft. It wasn't theft. It was strategic resource allocation. Elena laughed. The sound came out harsh, almost hysterical. You're unbelievable. Even now, even when you've been caught, you're trying to spin it as something noble. I'm trying to explain that you don't understand how this works. That money wasn't being stolen. It was being positioned for future use. Investments, opportunities, things that required discretion. Then why didn't you tell your mother? Why hide it if it was legitimate? Because she wouldn't have understood. She's too old, too stuck in the traditional ways. She doesn't see what I see. What you see is your own greed dressed up as vision. You don't know anything about me. I know you're terrified. I can hear it in your voice. You're about to lose everything, and you're calling me because you think I can somehow stop it. Can you? No. Elena, please, I know I hurt you. I know the way I ended things was cruel, but this is different. This is my life, my future. If my mother removes me, I'm nothing. You should have thought about that before you betrayed everyone who trusted you. I never betrayed anyone. I did what was necessary. Keep telling yourself that. Maybe eventually you'll believe it. Elena stood up, paced to the window. You threw me away like I was garbage, Damien. You married me for show and divorced me for convenience. And now you're calling me, asking for help, like I owe you something. I'm not asking you to do it for me. I'm asking you to do it because you're better than this, better than revenge. This isn't revenge. This is justice. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're working with my enemies to destroy me. Your enemies didn't steal from their own people. You did that all by yourself. Elena, don't call me again. She hung up, turned off her phone, sat in the dark, and tried to process the conversation. Part of her felt vindicated. Damien was scared, desperate, finally understanding what it felt like to be powerless. But another part felt hollow. This was what she'd wanted, wasn't it? For him to face consequences, for him to feel the fear she'd felt. So why didn't it feel better? The next morning, Lucian called a meeting. Everyone gathered in the main conference room. He stood at the head of the table, looking more serious than Elena had ever seen him. I've accepted Catherine's proposal. As of today, we're in a formal alliance with the Veil organization. 6 months protection, 2 years consultation. The agreement starts immediately. What about Damien? Victoria asked. Removed from all operational decisions. He'll retain a nominal title for appearance sake, but real authority transfers to a committee Catherine's appointing. She's also installing new financial oversight, new accountability measures, new everything. And he's just accepting this. He doesn't have a choice. Catherine froze his accounts, stripped his access, and made it very clear that if he fights this, things will get significantly worse for him. Sarah leaned forward. Define worse. I didn't ask. Catherine has her methods. I'm choosing not to know the details. Elena felt her stomach turn. Is he safe? Everyone looked at her. Lucian's expression softened slightly. Catherine assured me he won't be harmed. Beyond that, I don't know. But you're okay with not knowing. I'm okay with staying out of internal family business. What Catherine does with her son is not my concern. What matters is that the alliance gives us stability, legitimacy, and protection during a vulnerable time. At what cost? At the cost of aligning with a traditional organization we've spent years trying to undermine. It's not perfect, but it's strategic. He looked around the table. Anyone have objections? No one spoke. Elena wanted to say that this felt wrong, that they were compromising everything they claimed to stand for. But she also knew Lucian was right. Strategic alliances weren't about ideological purity. They were about survival. Good, Lucian said. Then we move forward. Catherine's sending representatives tomorrow to begin coordination. Be professional, be cooperative, and remember that this is temporary. We're not becoming them. We're working with them until we're strong enough to fully replace them. The meeting ended. People filed out. Elena stayed seated, staring at the table. Lucian sat down beside her. Talk to me, he said. I feel like I just sold out everything. You didn't sell out. You exposed corruption. What happened after that was inevitable. Was it? Or did I just hand you exactly what you needed to make this alliance happen? Lucian was quiet for a moment. You think I manipulated you? Did you? No. But I won't pretend I'm not benefiting from what you did. The intelligence you provided gave Catherine leverage to remove Damien. Damien's removal created instability. Instability created opportunity. We took it. So I was useful. You were brave. There's a difference. Elena looked at him. Damien called me last night, begging me to help him. What did you say? I told him no, hung up, turned off my phone. But I keep thinking about it, about how scared he sounded, how desperate. And you feel guilty. I feel confused. I wanted him to face consequences. Now he is, and it doesn't feel the way I thought it would. That's because revenge is a fantasy. The reality is always more complicated. Lucian stood up. You did the right thing, Elena, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Damien made his choices. You just made sure he couldn't escape them. He left. Elena sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by the evidence of everything she'd helped build and everything she'd helped destroy. She didn't feel victorious, she didn't feel vindicated, she just felt tired. The alliance with Catherine's organization changed everything faster than Elena expected. Within a week, the office felt different. There were new faces in the hallways, people from the traditional side learning how Lucian's operation worked. They moved carefully, spoke quietly, clearly uncomfortable in an environment where disagreement was encouraged instead of punished. Elena watched them struggle to adapt and saw herself 3 months ago, equally lost, equally uncertain. She'd been assigned to help with the transition, which meant spending hours explaining how decisions got made, how information flowed, why transparency mattered more than hierarchy. Most of them listened politely and ignored everything she said. A few actually seemed to understand. One of them was Marcus Chen, no relation to Sarah, a lieutenant from Damien's organization who'd been reassigned to help coordinate security protocols. He cornered Elena in the break room on day 4.
"Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "Why'd you do it? Expose Damien. You had to know it would blow back on you." Elena poured herself coffee. "Because it was the right thing to do." "That's a nice answer. What's the real one?" She looked at him. Marcus was younger than she'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of face that suggested he'd seen things he wished he hadn't. "The real answer is I was angry. Angry at how he treated me, angry at how he treated everyone.
And I wanted him to face consequences for once in his life. And now that he has, now I'm not sure how I feel about it." Marcus nodded slowly. "I worked for Damien for 6 years, watched him make decisions that hurt people, justify things that couldn't be justified, all while pretending it was for the greater good. When Catherine showed us the evidence of what he'd been doing, stealing from us while preaching loyalty, half the guys wanted to kill him. The other half just wanted to disappear." "What did you want?" "I wanted to understand how someone could be that hypocritical and not even realize it, but I don't think he didn't realize it. I think he just didn't care." "That's worse somehow." "Yeah, it is." Marcus grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you exposed him. Most of us are. We're just not sure what comes next. That makes 2 of us." Over the following weeks, Elena watched the organizational merger play out in real time. Catherine installed new leadership in her organization, people who understood that the old ways were dying and adaptation was the only path forward. Some of Damien's former lieutenants quit rather than work under the new structure. Others, like Marcus, stayed and tried to learn. Damien himself disappeared, not literally but functionally. He was still alive, still technically part of the family, but he'd been moved to a property upstate where he couldn't cause problems. Catherine made it clear he was under house supervision, a polite term for comfortable imprisonment. Elena tried not to think about him there, alone, stripped of everything that had defined him. She failed at not thinking about it. "You're doing it again," Sarah said one afternoon. They were reviewing integration reports, tracking how the 2 organizations were learning to work together. Staring into space, guilt spiraling. "I'm not guilt spiraling. You absolutely are. You get this look, like you're trying to solve a math problem that doesn't have an answer." Elena set down her pen. "Do you think we did the right thing? Aligning with Catherine? Strategically? Yes. Morally? That's more complicated." "How so?" "We spent years positioning ourselves as the alternative to traditional organizations. Then the second it became convenient, we partnered with the biggest traditional organization in the city. That's hypocrisy. Or pragmatism. There's a fine line between the two." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "But here's what I know. The alliance is temporary. 6 months of mutual protection, 2 years of consultation. After that, we're positioned to either absorb Catherine's organization or split off completely, but from a position of strength instead of vulnerability. Lucian's playing the long game." "And what happens to all the people who trusted Catherine, who believed in the old ways? They adapt or they don't. That's not our responsibility. Isn't it? We're the ones forcing the change." "No, we're the ones offering an alternative. They're choosing whether to take it." Sarah gathered her papers. "Elena, you can't save everyone. You can't make this transition painless. All you can do is make sure that when the dust settles, what's left is better than what was there before." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Sarah's words, about responsibility and choice, and the difference between the two. She thought about Damien in his house upstate, probably awake too, probably wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number.
I need to see you, please, just once, then I'll never ask again. She knew who it was. Should have blocked the number, should have deleted the message. Instead, she stared at it for 10 minutes before typing back. When? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. There's a park near where you used to live. I'll be there. Elena almost said no. Almost told him to leave her alone, to accept what had happened and move on. But something stopped her. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the need for closure. Maybe just the desire to see if looking at him now would hurt the way it used to. She went. The park was small, mostly used by people walking dogs and mothers with strollers. Damien was sitting on a bench near the fountain, wearing jeans and a jacket that looked wrong on him. Too casual, too normal. He looked thinner than she remembered. Tired. When he saw her, he stood up. You came. I'm here. That doesn't mean this was a good idea. I know. I just needed to see you, to talk, without lawyers or intermediaries or people listening. Elena stayed standing. Talk then. Damien sat back down, gestured to the space beside him. She didn't take it. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about the choices I made, the way I treated you. And I was wrong. Not just strategically wrong, but fundamentally wrong. About you. About what mattered. About everything. That's a big admission coming from you. I know. I'm not good at this. At admitting mistakes. My whole life I've been taught that showing weakness is the same as being weak. That apologizing is surrender. He looked up at her. But I was wrong about that too. Elena crossed her arms. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only person who might understand, who might believe that I actually mean it. I don't understand, Damien, and I'm not sure I believe you. Fair enough. He stood up again, paced a few steps. When my mother showed me the evidence you'd given her, I was furious. Not at you exactly. At the situation, at being caught. But also at myself for being so stupid. You were stealing from your own people. I was positioning assets for future use. At least that's what I told myself. But the truth is I was scared. Scared of losing control. Scared that if I didn't have leverage, hidden resources, backup plans, someone would take everything from me. He turned to face her. Turns out I was right. Just not in the way I expected. You did this to yourself. I know. That's what makes it worse. I could blame you, blame Lucian, blame my mother. But the reality is I made every single decision that led here. The wedding, the divorce, the theft, the killing Richard when he tried to expose me. He paused. I killed a man because I was too proud to admit I'd been wrong. Elena felt cold. You're confessing this to me because someone should know the truth, the whole truth, not the sanitized version my mother's telling people, not the strategic narrative Lucian's probably building, the actual truth. He sat back down. I'm not a good person, Elena. I'm not even a person who tried to be good and failed. I'm someone who never tried at all, who convinced himself that power and control were the same as strength. Why are you telling me this now? Because in a few weeks I'm leaving the country. My mother's arranged it. Somewhere I can't cause problems. Where I can live quietly and not be a reminder of everything that went wrong. He looked at his hands. I wanted to see you before I left. To tell you that you were right. About what? About me being a coward. About me being terrified of actually caring about anything. You saw that the night I divorced you. You called it out. And I dismissed it because acknowledging it would mean admitting you knew me better than I knew myself. Elena sat down finally, not next to him, but on the other end of the bench. I don't forgive you. I'm not asking you to. Good. Because I can't. What you did to me, what you did to Richard, what you did to everyone who trusted you, that's not something that gets forgiven with an apology and a confession. I know. They sat in silence for a while. People passed by, oblivious to the weight of the conversation happening on the bench. A dog barked. A child laughed. Normal life continuing around them. Can I ask you something? Damien said finally. Maybe. Are you happy? Working for Lucian. Building whatever it is you're building. Elena thought about it. Was she happy?
She was useful, valued, part of something that felt meaningful, but happy was complicated. I'm less miserable than I was. That's probably the best I can hope for right now. That's honest. It's all I have left, honesty. Everything else got burned away. Damien nodded. I'm glad you're doing well, or at least better. You deserve that. Don't what? Don't try to be noble now. It doesn't suit you. He almost smiled. Almost. You're right, sorry. Old habits. They sat for another few minutes, then Elena stood up. I should go. Yeah, you should. He stood too. Thank you. For coming. For listening. For not having me killed when you probably could have. I'm not you, Damien. I don't solve problems by eliminating people. No, you're better than that. You always were. Elena walked away without looking back. She made it 3 blocks before she had to stop, lean against a building, and just breathe. The conversation had been surreal. Damien admitting fault, showing actual remorse, being vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. Part of her wanted to believe it was genuine. Part of her knew it didn't matter if it was. He was leaving. She was staying. Their lives had diverged completely. She pulled out her phone and called Lucian. Everything okay? He answered. I just saw Damien. Pause. Where? A park. He asked to meet. I went. Elena, I know I should have told you, but I needed to do this alone to see if I could face him without flinching. And could you? Yes. And it felt like closing a door. Good. That's good. Another pause. What did he want? To confess. To apologize. To tell me I was right about him being a coward. How generous. It wasn't about generosity. It was about him needing someone to know the truth before he disappeared. He told you about leaving? Catherine's sending him away, making sure he can't cause problems. That's probably smart. Lucian's voice softened. How are you feeling? Tired, but okay. Better than I expected, actually. Come back to the office. Let's talk. Elena did. When she got there, Lucian was waiting in his office with tea instead of coffee, which suggested he'd been thinking about this conversation before she arrived. She sat down, and he didn't ask questions, just let her talk. About the meeting. About what Damien had said. About the strange feeling of realizing she didn't hate him anymore. That's growth, Lucian said when she finished. It doesn't feel like growth, it feels like exhaustion. Sometimes they're the same thing. You spent so much energy being angry at him, now you're not. That's space for something else. Like what? Like figuring out what you actually want. Not what you want because he took it away. Not what you want to prove to him. What you want for yourself. Elena looked at him. Is this a professional conversation or a personal one? Can't it be both? I don't know. Can it? Lucian smiled slightly. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About the line between professional and personal. How working together complicates things. Things like what? Like the fact that I respect you professionally, but I also care about you personally. And I'm not sure how to navigate that without making things weird. Elena felt her heart speed up. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I value you as a colleague, as someone who's helped build something important, but also as someone I'd like to know outside of strategy meetings and organizational charts. That's a very diplomatic way of saying you're interested. I'm trying to be respectful, given the power dynamic, given everything you've been through. Elena set her tea down. Lucian, I appreciate the caution, but I'm not fragile. I'm not going to break if you're honest with me. Then here's honesty. I've been attracted to you since the first time we talked at the cafe. I've watched you grow from someone terrified and angry into someone confident and capable. And somewhere in that process, my professional respect turned into something more personal. How much more personal? Enough that I think about you when I'm not working. Enough that I want to know what you think about things that have nothing to do with organizational strategy. Enough that having this conversation is making me nervous, which almost never happens. Elena stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the city, at the lights beginning to flicker on as evening settled. I'm not ready for a relationship. I know. I'm still processing what happened with Damien, still figuring out who I am outside of that situation. I know that too. But I'm also not saying no. She turned around. Lucian was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Hope, maybe. Or uncertainty. What are you saying? He asked. I'm saying give me time. Let me finish processing this. Let me figure out what I want without the pressure of someone waiting for an answer. How much time? I don't know. A few months? Maybe more. Is that okay? It's more than okay. It's smart. He stood up. Elena, I'm not going anywhere. Take whatever time you need. And if the answer eventually is no, if you decide that this isn't what you want, I'll respect that. And if it's yes, then we'll figure it out together. The next few months passed in a blur of work and transition. The alliance with Catherine's organization held, though there were tensions. Some of the traditional people couldn't adapt to the new methods and quit. Others thrived, bringing decades of experience to an operation that had been built on theory more than practice. The synthesis created something neither organization had been alone. Elena found herself in increasingly important meetings, offering insights that bridged the gap between old and new. She understood both worlds now, the fear-based hierarchy of traditional operations and the consensus-driven approach of Lucian's model. Neither was perfect, but combined, they created something more resilient. Catherine attended some of these meetings. She was still formidable, still terrifying in her own way, but there was a grudging respect between them now. After one particularly contentious session about territorial boundaries, Catherine pulled Elena aside. "You've done well," she said. "Thank you. My son was a fool to dismiss you." "We agree on that." Catherine almost smiled. "He's settled in his new location. He's not happy, but he's alive. I thought you'd want to know." "I appreciate you telling me." "Don't mistake my telling you for sentimentality. I'm informing you because you're a key part of this alliance. What you did, exposing the theft, it forced changes that needed to happen, changes I should have made years ago." "Why didn't you?" "Because he's my son, and I hoped he would grow into the role, become what the organization needed." She paused. "I was wrong. Motherhood sometimes makes you blind to things you'd see clearly in anyone else." "I understand that." "Do you? You don't have children." "No. But I understand loving someone enough to overlook their flaws. I did it with Damien, just in a different way." Catherine nodded slowly. "He contacted you, didn't he, before he left?" "Yes." "What did he say?" "That he was sorry, that I was right about him, that he'd wasted what we could have had." "And you believed him?" "I believed he believed it in that moment. Whether it'll last, I don't know. But it doesn't matter anymore." "Why not?" "Because I'm not building my life around him anymore. Not around what he did or didn't do. I'm building it around what I want." Catherine studied her for a long moment. "You've grown up." "I had to." 6 months after the alliance began, Lucian called a meeting of the senior team. Everyone gathered in the main conference room, which had been renovated to accommodate the larger combined leadership. He stood at the head of the table, looking more relaxed than Elena had seen him in months. "The protection period ends tomorrow," he said. "According to our agreement with Catherine, we're now free to operate independently or extend the relationship on new terms. I've spoken with Catherine. She's open to extending, but on a more formal partnership basis. Equal authority, shared resources, joint decision-making." "What's your recommendation?" Victoria asked. "My recommendation is we accept. Not forever, but for another 2 years while we consolidate the gains we've made. After that, we renegotiate or split amicably." "See, and if we want to split now?" "Then we can, but we'll be weaker for it. The alliance gave us legitimacy, access, protection during a vulnerable time. Walking away now means going back to being the upstart challenging the establishment. Staying means being part of the establishment while we reshape it from within." Marcus, the lieutenant from Damien's old organization, raised his hand. "Question. What happens to those of us who came from the traditional side? If this becomes permanent, where do we fit?" "You fit wherever your skills are most valuable. This isn't a hostile takeover. It's a merger. We're keeping the best of both approaches and discarding what doesn't work." Lucian looked around the table. "Anyone have objections?" Silence. Then Sarah spoke. "I'm in. But I want it on record that in 2 years we seriously evaluate independence." "Agreed." One by one, everyone voiced their support. When it came to Elena, she realized everyone was looking at her, waiting for her opinion. "I think we stay," she said. "Not because it's comfortable, because it's right. We set out to change how these organizations operate. Can't do that from the outside." Lucian nodded. "Then it's decided. I'll inform Catherine we're extending the partnership." The meeting ended. People filed out, already discussing implementation details. Elena stayed seated, feeling the weight of the decision. This was real now, not temporary, not provisional. They were committed to rebuilding something from the ground up. Lucian sat down beside her. "You okay?" "I'm okay. Just thinking." About? About how different everything is from 6 months ago, from a year ago, from the night Damien divorced me. Regrets? No. Just perspective. She looked at him. "I'm ready." "For what?" "To answer your question. The one you asked about us." His expression shifted. "And?" "And the answer is yes, if you're still interested." "I'm still interested." "Then let's try this. Slowly. Carefully. See what happens." Lucian smiled, genuinely smiled, and it transformed his face. "I can work with slowly and carefully." They didn't kiss, didn't make a big declaration, just sat together in the conference room as the evening light faded, talking about everything except work, about books and movies and the kind of normal things that normal people talked about. It felt strange, good strange. For the first time in a year, Elena felt like she was building towards something instead of running from something. The foundation was still shaky. There were still problems to solve, tensions to manage, threats to address. But she had people she trusted, work that mattered, a future that was hers to shape. 3 months later, Catherine announced her retirement. She'd been planning it quietly, grooming new leadership, ensuring the transition would be smooth. She called Elena to her estate one last time. "I'm leaving this in capable hands," Catherine said. They were in her garden, the same one Elena had seen during that first terrifying visit. "Yours, in part. I'm not running the organization. Not directly, but your influence is throughout it. The changes you helped push through, the integration you facilitated. You're more central to this than you realize." "I was just doing my job." "You were doing much more than that. You were proving that people can change, that organizations can evolve, that the old ways don't have to be the only ways." Catherine paused. "My son never understood that. He thought power was about control, about making people fear you. But you understand it's about trust, about giving people reasons to follow instead of forcing them to obey. I learned that from Lucian. And you taught it to us. That's the exchange that matters." Catherine handed her an envelope. "This is for you. Don't open it now. Open it later, when you need a reminder of what you accomplished." Elena took the envelope. "What is it?" "Read it and find out." That night, alone in her apartment, Elena opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, Catherine's precise script covering 2 pages. It detailed everything Elena had contributed to the transition. Not just the intelligence about Damien, but the countless hours of bridge building, the patient explanations, the willingness to see value in both old and new approaches. At the end, Catherine had written something that made Elena's throat tight. "You came to us broken, discarded by my son, convinced you were worthless. You leave us having reshaped an entire organization through nothing but intelligence, courage, and the refusal to accept that being thrown away meant you had no value. That transformation is more impressive than anything I've accomplished in 40 years. Thank you for showing all of us what strength really looks like." Elena read it 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a drawer where she kept things that mattered. 1 year after the wedding that had lasted 4 hours, Elena stood in the same office building where she'd first met Lucian's team, but now it was her office too. Her nameplate was on the door. Her ideas were in the strategic plans. Her voice mattered in rooms where decisions got made. Lucian found her there, staring out the window at the city. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked. "Just thinking about how much has changed. For better or worse?" "Definitely for better." She turned to face him. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't called you that day? If I just accepted Damien's settlement and disappeared?" "I think about it sometimes." Then I remember that you were never going to disappear. You're too stubborn for that. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Also a compliment. Elena smiled. I used to think being thrown away by Damien was the worst thing that could happen to me. And now? Now I think it was the best thing, because it forced me to figure out who I was without him, what I was capable of when I stopped trying to fit into someone else's vision of what I should be. Lucian crossed the room, stood beside her at the window. For what it's worth, I'm glad he was too stupid to see what he had. Because otherwise I wouldn't be here. Exactly. They stood together, watching the city move below them. Somewhere out there, Damien was living whatever life Catherine had arranged for him. Somewhere out there, Richard Morrison's daughter was graduating college without her father. Somewhere out there, hundreds of people were working in an organization that looked nothing like it had a year ago. And Elena was here. Not because someone had chosen her, not because someone had thrown her away, but because she'd chosen herself, had fought her way from invisible to essential, had refused to accept that being discarded meant being worthless. You know what the weirdest part is? She said. What? I don't hate him anymore, Damien. I don't forgive him either, but I don't hate him. He's just someone who made bad choices and faced consequences, that's all. That's healthy. That's exhausting. Hating someone is simple. Not hating them is complicated. Most worthwhile things are. Elena leaned against him slightly. Lucian's arm came around her shoulders, easy and comfortable. They'd been together for months now, taking it slowly like she'd asked, building something on foundation of trust instead of desperation. It wasn't perfect. They argued about strategy, disagreed about approaches, got on each other's nerves in the way that people who actually know each other do. But it was real. And it was hers. Not because someone had given it to her, but because she'd built it. I love you, Lucian said quietly. Elena felt the words settle into her chest, warm and certain. She'd known he felt it. He'd shown it in 1,000 small ways. But hearing it said out loud was different. I love you too, she said, and meant it. The city lights flickered on as evening fell, millions of individual decisions creating collective brightness. Elena watched them and thought about how much light could come from darkness, how being broken down completely sometimes meant you could rebuild into something stronger. She'd started this year wearing a wedding dress, believing that being chosen by someone powerful meant she mattered. She'd ended it understanding that she mattered regardless of who chose her, that her value wasn't determined by whether someone kept her or threw her away, but by what she did with the pieces after everything fell apart. Damien had been wrong about her. Not just wrong about her being convenient or disposable, but wrong about what she was capable of when she stopped trying to please him and started building for herself. And in being wrong, in throwing away something he didn't value, he'd accidentally given her the greatest gift possible. Freedom. Space to become someone who didn't need his validation or anyone else's. Someone who could stand in a room full of powerful people and know she belonged there, not because someone let her in, but because she'd earned her place. That was the truth that changed everything. Not that Damien had been cruel, not that she'd survived his cruelty, but that in surviving, in refusing to stay broken, she'd discovered a strength she never knew she had. And that strength, built from rejection and abandonment and the long climb back from nothing, was more powerful than anything Damien's empire had ever offered her. She was no longer the woman he'd married, no longer the woman he'd divorced. She was something he'd never expected and could never control. She was herself. Finally, completely, undeniably herself. And that was more than enough.